If you only had an hour to give advice to your 13-year-old younger self, what would you say? Well, these are the three things that I don't think any functioning adult can live without. Welcome back to the Tripping Off podcast. My name is Jesse Lyon, licensed mental health counselor, certified trauma hypnotherapist, and the internet's dream interpreter. If you're new here, consider hitting subscribe. Check me out over on YouTube. I actually just posted a 2.5-hour intensive lecture about how to deal with trauma, specifically for the neurodivergent community. It was a presentation I got the opportunity to give to the Homeless Support Network here in Orlando, and I was honored to be able to do it. And a lot of people have been reaching out. It was only posted earlier this week, but a lot of people have been reaching out telling me how impactful it was. And so maybe I'll make more videos like that. Like, I didn't know it's one of the top performing videos right now. And I was like, 2.5 hours? Nobody's going to watch this damn thing, but I'll put it up anyway. So if you're new, check some of those things out. I'm just here to try and make life a little bit easier for you to manage and to give you some of those insights that maybe you missed somewhere along the way, because therapists need to give better advice. We need to be more accessible. There are ways to live your life that make it better. And these today are the three things that I think every adult human being needs to know in order to orient their life in the correct direction. And so that's my mission. That's my job. I feel like it's my calling on this earth to be here to give this information, to give this data so you can live the life you were supposed to live. I mean, that's all we're trying to do here. So it's a great question. You see it asked all the time on like Instagram or podcasts. You know, it's one of those like get deep kind of conversations you ask on a first date, right? You know, or I don't know, depends on how dating goes these days. Do we ask those things on first dates? Maybe that's a second or third date kind of thing. I don't know. But that question of if you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, what would you say? And so for me, I actually had the opportunity, not to my younger self, but to give some advice to a younger person in my life. We had a little coming of age, like party sort of celebration for one of my relatives, and they turned 13. And I was struck by the request from the family members saying, hey, everyone should gather a little bit of information, a little bit of choice words to say about what it means to become an adult. Like, what things would you want to pass on from your experience to someone who's, you know, coming of age at 13, you know, not fully an adult, but, you know, starting to get into puberty, starting to deal with some real heavier things about who am I and what is my life going to be, and what would you want to speak into that young person's life. And so I got the opportunity to really think about that for myself. You know, you see it on the internet and Twitter and Instagram. And, you know, you just kind of like, yeah, you know, I might say some stuff about believe in yourself and trust yourself and, you know, never doubt your gut and the things like that. But to really sit down and think, like, what speech, like in 30 minutes or less, what would I want to say to my younger self? What wisdom can I impart that's going to be actually helpful? And so I wrote copious notes. I say that tongue in cheek because I'm about to show you my notes that I actually wrote. I wrote copious notes on my phone that I took. If you can see that, there's 3 bullet points: power, boundaries, and shame. And from those 3 points, I lectured for 30 minutes because you know how I am. And so I'm going to share with you those choice pieces of wisdom that I shared with my relative: power, boundaries, and shame. When I was a teenager, when I was coming of age, I really had this question. You know, everyone starts to ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do with your life? You know, what's your purpose here? And that, I don't know, maybe other people take that question easier than I took it, but it was a very weighty question for me. Maybe it was some fear of making the wrong choices. Maybe it was some confusion about like, what am I actually doing here? Because I knew the answer had to be bigger than just like making myself happy, because there's no real meaning to that. You know, that's not going to last me until I'm 85 on my deathbed thinking, what did I accomplish with this gift of life that I was given? And so at that time in my life, I'm talking about 15, 16, about that age, maybe 14, but around that age, I was really into philosophy, because I think with philosophy, it gave me a mental escape from the frustrations that I was dealing with as a teenager. And we all deal with frustrations as a teenager, angst, right? And so my angst came out in philosophical discourse, right? You know, I loved reading these books. And so at that time, I was reading the books like Darwin and Sigmund Freud, right? And they all kind of said that human beings are driven, basically, at their most primal aspect. They are driven by a will to survive, like any other animal, right? And that was the big sort of push of Darwin, was like, we are animals and we have evolved just like all the other animals. And Freud said the same thing, we're here, and the ways that the brain works are all put together in order to help us survive and help us live. But there's something about that, even at 14, 15, that didn't really sit well with me, because it just didn't make any sense. Because I look out into my life and I see all these people who are not surviving, and they're not even making correct or healthy choices in order to survive better. In fact, they're doing things that, like smoking and drinking and bad relationships and, unaliving themselves. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that didn't make sense. It didn't sit right. I'm like, there has to be a better answer than that, because how do we explain these things? Well, it was at that time I started to read. I know I'm a weird teenager. Listen, you can bash me in the comments. Go for it, right? But at that time, I was reading Friedrich Nietzsche. I was reading about Nietzsche. And Nietzsche said that, no. Darwin, Freud, you've got it all wrong, homies. It's not about a will to survive. Human beings at their core are driven by a will to power. I was like, ooh, wait a minute. Nietzsche, Friedrich, you got to unpack that for me. And so he went on to say, it's all about power. Human beings will do whatever they can in their life to increase their power and control over the world around them. I said, now that resonates. Now that really resonated. That made sense, because when my thoughts start to race inside of my head and I have the power to drink, to take those thoughts away, that gives me a sense of control. When I feel down and sad and depressed and slow and sluggish, but I can smoke a cigarette outside and take those feelings away, I feel like I have power and control. When I don't feel very excited or satisfied by life, but I can get into a chaotic and toxic but heavy and passionate relationship that makes me feel something again, I feel power and control. And when a human being is faced with a situation in their life where they feel so down and so broken and so hopeless and so unable to change the circumstance that they're in, they will take the last opportunity of power that they have and take their own life. And that's what we see time and time again. And that's a lot of times what we see in our current culture. Fast forwarding to present day Jesse's thoughts, we see that quite a bit, where people are feeling hopeless and powerless over their lives. And so you see a lot more suicide in the world today because of this feeling of powerless. People don't feel like they can really change the situation that they're in. They don't feel like they can change themselves. They don't feel like they can change the world. It grows bigger and bigger. The disparity between the classes grows heavier and heavier. The inability to make enough income to pay off debts and actually get somewhere in life feels more and more meaningless. Well, hopelessness and that last-ditch effort to regain power or some feeling of control over our lives, we'll take it. We'll take it. And that's why I think really at its core, you're seeing suicide being talked about so much and being such a real problem. But this really resonated with 14, 15-year-old Jesse. He's like, okay, that makes sense. And so I had to sit there and I had to think. And I was like, okay, well, if human beings are driven by power, and I am a human being, not a space alien, contrary to popular belief and Mark Zuckerberg. I am a real person. I'm a real boy. I said to myself, and I was like, okay, power. What is the power that drives me? And so I was like, well, you got economists, right? And accountants, they are driven by the power of money to influence people's behavior. I was like, okay, that's cool. I was like, you got physicists and engineers, right? Who are driven by the power of rocket ships and propulsion and, sending people to Mars, right? It's like, that's a powerful thing. They want to study that and they want to understand it. You got those who write books, right, and study the English language, right? They are driven by the power of words and communication, right? Politics, the way that, in which we structure human beings and systems of communities, the way that has power over influence over people. I thought that was all really amazing. And so, me being a 14, year old teenager. I was like, I want the most powerful thing. What is the mostest powerful thing that I could study? That would be a life worth living. And I thought to myself, behind each and every one of these things, behind everything we know of in the universe, is a human mind. And the most powerful things, even as powerful as they are, the atomic bomb, right? The economy and politics and war, global warming, the calamity, the heat death universe, all of that is a human brain. If I could study the human mind and understand psychology, that would be a life worth living. That would be a journey and a goal to dedicate myself to that I could feel proud of. So it was at that point that I became a psychologist, decided to study the field of psychology. And so when I'm passing this wisdom on, I'm not saying everyone should be in the field of counseling and psychology. That's the answer for me, right? But you have to think about, what is the power that drives you? What is the thing that you can't live without, that thing that keeps you up at night, that fascinates you, the power that you just have to be a part of? Because if you're not a part of it, you're going to feel like you're missing out. And everything else can fall by the wayside. But it's like, as long as you have that thing, as long as you can connect with and be curious about this power, you'll be all right. Because there's so many options that we could choose from. And that's great. Don't get bogged down by the options. There are 101 million things that can make you happy in this world. But the thing that can organize your thoughts and really make you motivated, even in the face of despair and calamity, is focusing on that thing, that power that excites you, right? And I think really with our culture and with a lot of what we teach younger children is that they should be afraid of power. Like, oh, that's too powerful. That's too big. Don't be too powerful. Don't be too much. Don't be too. No, you have to. You have to find that thing that is so awe-inspiringly powerful that you'll dedicate yourself to it. And that's really what can guide you and keep you going in times that get dark, because they will get dark. You know it. You know it. I know it. And they, seemingly when you think that they're at their darkest, sometimes they even get darker. And so if you have that power that drives you, you'll be able to make it through all of those things. So I shared that with my relative. And I said, find the power that drives you. Don't shy away from it. Don't be embarrassed. Be excited about it. Cling to it. Let it drive you. Be excited about it. Be curious about it. Let that guide your life. But here's the thing. Here's point number 2, boundaries. When we think about power, it's okay to be powerful, and you should never be ashamed of your own power. That's called confidence. Unashamedness of your own power is called confidence. But there are limits to power. Limits to power in our society, in the way that we structure our interactions with other people. You are allowed to be, and even encouraged, it's good for you and good for others, for you to be the most powerful person that you can be. However, when that power starts to encroach on other people and take away their power, that is unacceptable. We call that evil. That's how we define it. That's how I define it, at least. Right? So it's okay for me to be strong. I can go to the gym and I can be strong and I can lift weights and I can perfect and develop and grow the power of my physical body. And that's good for me. That's called healthy. Right? However, if I exercise my power and in order to feel powerful, I hurt other people, I bully them, I take away their resources, I control them, I manipulate them, that is evil. And this goes both ways. One, remembering what it is that we're allowed to do and not allowed to do, what is right and what is wrong. It's that definition, that delineation between the boundaries of power. This is my domain. That is your domain. I need to respect that if I'm going to be a moral person. And you need to respect that about me. That is what's allowed for me. And so you can see it goes both ways. One, do not usurp the power of another. However, never, and I mean never, and if there's one thing I hope you hear, it's this one. Never allow somebody else to encroach upon, usurp, or take your power away from you, or to make you feel guilty about your power. That's the most subtle and nefarious of them all. The most malicious is not to directly take your power away, but to make you feel ashamed for being powerful. It's so devious. It's so insidious because it's not a direct attack. It's a subverted attack to use guilt as a manipulation tool to make you feel bad for the power that you have. Oh, that, my friends, is evil. Don't let people take your power away. Don't let people cause you to feel embarrassed or guilty or ashamed for you being powerful. You're allowed to be. In fact, the more powerful that you are, the better it is for everybody else. The more that we grow a strong and healthy, vibrant community of people who are growing and being the best versions of themselves they can be, the better it is for everybody else around them. It's when people start to fight inside of themselves and turn conflict into cockiness, where I'm trying to show that I'm better than everybody else instead of just trying to be the best version of myself, that bad things start to happen. And so that suggestion that you should be ashamed of your power is the beginning of the downfall of the cockiness, of the I'm better than you, because now we start the toxicity of comparison. Compare to yourself. Be better than the you of yesterday. Be more powerful than the you of yesterday. But don't let somebody take that power away through guilt and shame. It's huge. So it does go both ways. And this is what I shared with my family member. I said, listen, be careful, be wary, and be diligent to make sure that your power does not rob the power of others, but in fact upholds them and encourages them to be the best version of themselves and increase their power. But also in the same way, don't let someone take yours away either. Never cede. Never surrender that power that's yours. It's not good for anybody. You may think that you're doing them a favor. You may think that you are holding back a conflict and, being the bigger person, right? There's a difference between being a bigger person and hurting yourself, being the bigger person and increasing your power and just walking away from a fight that's not meant to happen. There's a difference between that. And I think a lot of times people will trick us into doing the one that's the worst for us. And that brings us to the very last point, shame. Shame is a terrible, terrible, but powerful motivator. And you can see how it's tied up in boundaries, how shame is used to make us feel embarrassed for our power and for the things that we're good at. We struggle to feel confident and to really step into and say, I'm good at this, and to proclaim that. For some reason, when we compliment ourselves, it's seen as narcissistic or haughty or gaudy or full of ourselves. When you step out in confidence and say, no, this is something I'm good at, the world becomes a better place as well. Here's the difference. And this is what I shared. There's a big difference. There's a vast chasm between guilt and shame. And it is imperative that a young person and that all of us understand and know this. Guilt says, I made a mistake. I did something wrong. And it's my responsibility to atone for that and to make that right. I did something wrong. But shame says, I am something wrong. Those two are wildly different. You can fix guilt, right? We all make mistakes. And being guilty of something is a good thing for us because it's a growth opportunity. I'm not saying we should make mistakes on purpose, but I'm saying recognizing our guilt and atoning for that and rectifying those things is really a wonderful journey for us to be on. And it's a part of every person's story and journey. What is not a part of the journey and is story ending is feeling as though, believing as though you are the mistake. You are never a mistake. You were never a mistake. You never will be a mistake. And you are not a mistake today. The world is a better place for you being here. Every person, I believe this to the core of my being, every person has a place and has a part to play in this world. If you are here with a purpose. It may not be to be Beyonce, right? I may not be singing on stage and inspiring the world with my magnificent lyrics. It may not be to be the next Albert Einstein, right? I may not come up with the next greatest mathematical equation and breakthrough. My job is to be Jesse. Your job is to be you. And if you're here today, you have a role to play. And that's a huge thing. I talk to so many people who feel ashamed of who they are and feel, I don't want to say guilty because we know guilty is a good word, but ashamed that they aren't something that they're not. I have people tell me all the time, they're like, why can't I be successful like this person? Why can't I be smart like that person? Why can't I be talented and athletic like this person? I was like, because you're not those people, right? I will never be able to slam dunk or shoot, baskets like Shaquille O'Neal, right? Because I'm not Shaquille O'Neal, right? The same token, I guess you could say Shaquille O'Neal will never be able to shoot baskets like me, but that's less exciting. You know what I'm saying? Right? I'll never be able to sing like Beyonce. I'm not supposed to. Beyonce is supposed to sing like Beyonce. I'm supposed to sing in my terrible Jessie voice, and I'm supposed to be this kind voice on the internet for you. I mean, how unfortunate would it be if I tried to be Beyonce and Beyonce tried to be me? You'd have the worst of both the versions of ourselves. See what I'm saying? But I hear this all the time. If you are whatever, if you are a teacher, if you are an engineer, if you are a garbage collector, if you're a mail person, right? If you are a designer or a musical artist or a producer or somebody who is unhoused, every person has a role to play. And we need all of those people. Not everyone is supposed to be a rock star. If we're all rock stars, who would build the roads, right? If we were all, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg with millions of dollars and billions of dollars in the bank, who would actually get things done? Who would be humble and care for the children, and who would care for our neighbors, and who would take responsibility for, writing beautiful stories? That's what we need to do. Be yourself and never let anybody look down on you or cause you to feel ashamed for who you are. Find what it is that excites you, even if other people think that that's silly, right? I talk about the power of dreams. There's a lot of people who tell me what I do is very silly, and that's fine. That doesn't matter to me because this is my power. I think there is an incredible window of insight into who we are through the unconscious mind, and dreams are one of the clearest avenues to understanding that power. And whether you like it or not, everyone is driven by that unconscious psychological power. I think that's fascinating. Other people are driven by other things. Find what it is that drives you. Hold to it, cling to it, because the world will do everything in its power to strip that away from you. But never surrender that, and never surrender your boundaries. Finally, never allow shame to dictate your behavior. That is a constant struggle. That is a constant journey. That is a deliberate step that you take every day to enact these three things: power, boundaries, and shame. Make sure that you live today keeping those things in mind and paying attention to those things, because when you become apathetic is when that evil slips in, is when somebody else who is not apathetic and perhaps malicious will start to rob you of your power. Never let it. And even if you don't think about it yourself this way, let me remind you, you are powerful because you have a role to play. We're a system. We're a system. As much as some people may not like to hear that, like, we are an organism together. And you can see that. The way that human intuition works, and we can feel things from other people without even saying them. The way that we see this, the way that two human beings can be connected across time and space, and one person can feel an emotional charge that the other person had no way of directly communicating, but somehow this person felt sad when this person went through a terrible situation. They call them and say, "Hey, I was thinking about you today. I felt like you were sad." And they break down on the phone. They say, "Yeah, I am sad." Human beings are connected like that. We know this. We can't explain it yet. But we're all part of a system. And you playing a role in this society, this system of the human organism is just as important as a Beyonce or a Mark Zuckerberg or an Elon Musk or whatever. Never forget that. You are powerful. I'm so glad that you're here. If this has been helpful, please let me know. Send me an email. Leave a comment down below. I'm curious what your thoughts are. I'm curious what you'd like to hear in the next episode. That's all I got for you. I hope it was impactful for you as it was for me. See you in the next episode. Until then.